Have you ever wondered what happens to someone who lived with great kindness, yet died outside the church? Does God truly turn his back on a soul who tried to love him, but was never baptized? And if one day Padre Pio himself wrote to you, "Your father has been saved, but you must pray much for him," how would you understand those words? In early 1967, a Catholic woman in New Jersey received a letter from distant Italy. Inside, there wasn't a long teaching. There weren't even the usual words of comfort. There was only one short sentence written by a priest who bore the stigmata: "Your father has been saved, but you must pray much for him." It sounds simple until you learn one thing. Her father was Jewish. He had never been baptized. He had never become Catholic. For many Catholics at that time, this felt almost impossible to understand. How could someone who never entered the church, never received the sacraments, still be saved? The man who wrote that line was Padre Pio, a Capuchin friar in San Giovanni Rotondo, Italy. He was known for his life of deep prayer, for the wounds of Christ on his body, and for a special gift, a mysterious insight into souls. And the Jewish father he spoke of had a name: Julius Fine. To understand the meaning of Padre Pio's words, "Your father has been saved, but you must pray much for him," we have to go back to the story of the two of them, Julius and his daughter Florence. And even more, we have to look at how God can reach a soul in ways we never expect. By the end of 1966 in New Jersey, Florence Feynman was living a very ordinary life. She went to Mass on Sundays. She worked. She took care of her family. But most of her time and most of her heart belonged to one person, her father, Julius Fine. Julius was Jewish. He did not attend Catholic church like his daughter. He did not pray the rosary. He did not belong to any Catholic group. Yet everyone who knew him said the same thing. He was a kind man. He worked hard. He was honest. He never raised his voice. He helped his neighbors when he could. He lived simply. He treated people with respect. And when he spoke about God, he did so with quiet reverence, even though he never used theological words. Florence grew up in that atmosphere. To her, her father was the one who taught her to keep her word, to live uprightly, and to love without making a show of it. So when Julius became seriously ill, Florence's fear was not only about losing the father she loved. Deep inside, she carried another question, one she had never dared to say out loud. A good man who is not part of the church, where does he go after death? This was not a question asked for theology. It was the question of a daughter trying to hold on to hope for her father. As Julius's illness grew worse, that question no longer stayed quietly inside Florence's heart. It became a silent fear that followed her every day. But Julius was different. He did not complain. He did not blame anyone. He did not speak a bitter word. And it was that very peace that made the pain in Florence's heart ache even more. She would look at her father and wonder, if someone lives with such goodness yet remains outside the church, what will God do with their soul? This was no longer a distant worry like it had been at the beginning. Now she was facing real death. And suddenly the question became urgent, heavy like a stone pressing on her heart. Little by little, Florence began to fear that the answer might be the same one many ordinary Catholics at that time whispered among themselves. Without baptism, there is no salvation. Florence was not a theologian. She was not arguing over words or formulas. She simply heard lines like that repeated again and again. And when she applied them to her father, her heart truly broke. On one hand, she believed in God's mercy. On the other, she could not ignore what she had been taught and heard all her life. Caught between those two truths, Florence felt torn apart. She did not dare share this fear with many people because she was afraid of receiving cold, rigid answers. And deep in her heart, there were moments when she almost wanted to cry out, if someone like my father could be lost, then where is justice? And what about mercy? This was not a rebellious question. It was the cry of a daughter who truly loved her father and could not accept the thought that he might be abandoned forever. Florence did not need a beautiful theory. She needed hope, real hope, hope that had a foundation. And it was at that moment that she heard about a friar in distant Italy, a man who spent long hours in the confessional, a man who bore the wounds of Christ on his body, a man many people asked to pray for souls. His name was Padre Pio. Florence did not know much about Padre Pio. She only knew that he was a priest who lived simply, prayed deeply, and had a special love for the souls in purgatory. One evening, after many days of inner struggle, she sat down at her table, took out paper and pen, and began to write. It was not a polished letter, it was honest. She wrote about her father, about his illness, about the good life he had lived. She admitted her greatest fear, that he had never been baptized, and that she did not know what that meant before God. At the end, she wrote a simple request. Father, please pray for the soul of my good father. If possible, please give me a word so I may know how he is in the hands of God. She was not asking for a miracle. She was not waiting for a vision. She only needed an answer that was real, something her heart could hold on to. The letter was sent. It crossed the ocean to the monastery of San Giovanni Rotondo, a place Florence had never set foot in. On the other side of the ocean, Padre Pio's life continued as usual. He offered Mass, he heard confessions, he prayed the rosary, he endured physical suffering in silence, and he prayed for countless intentions sent from all over the world. For Padre Pio, each letter was never just a piece of paper. It was a soul or a family placed into his hands to be carried before God. One day during Mass, as he prepared for the consecration, the friars nearby noticed something unusual. Padre Pio became still, longer than usual. His gaze seemed fixed on an unseen point above the altar. His face grew serious and deeply sorrowful. In that silence, he sensed a presence, not a clear image, not a voice spoken aloud, just a soul placed before him, seen through the light of faith. That soul was at peace, but not yet complete. Not in the darkness of despair, but not yet in the fullness of light. It bore the mark of a life lived uprightly, yet it did not belong to someone who had lived within the Catholic Church. Padre Pio sensed in that soul a sincere love for God, but one not nourished by the sacraments, as many believers are. Right there at the altar, he quietly offered that soul to God, asking that it be led deeper into the light. He did not need to know the name. God already knew. And from that silent encounter, a small letter would soon bridge two shores, between a monastery in Italy and a daughter in New Jersey, anxiously praying for her father. A few weeks passed. Florence returned to her work and her daily life, but her worry about her father never left. She did not dare expect much from the letter she had sent. She was not even sure it had reached Padre Pio. Then one day, as she opened her mailbox like she always did, she saw an envelope from Italy. There was nothing special about it, just the handwriting of a friar. Florence carried the letter inside, sat down, and opened it with slightly trembling hands. She did not know what she was about to read. A familiar word of comfort, a short teaching, or simply, "I will pray for you." Inside, there were only a few short lines, believed to have been written by Padre Pio himself. "Your father has been saved, but you must pray much for him." That was all. No explanation. No theological argument. Those words went straight to the center of Florence's fear. What she feared most was that her father might be lost. Padre Pio answered, "He has been saved." But he did not stop there. He added, "You must pray much for him." This meant her father was being held by God, but still needed purification, still needed help through prayer. Not excluded, but not yet fully complete. Florence set the letter down and began to cry. not from sorrow, but because for the first time, she had an answer clearer than anything she had ever dared to hope for. Padre Pio's letter does not replace the Church's teaching. It does not say that baptism or life within the Church is no longer necessary. That path remains clear. It is the path the gospel gives us. But the words, "Your father has been saved, but you must pray much for him," reveal something very important. God is not limited by what we see on the outside. Some people come close to God through the sacraments in a very visible way. They can point to the exact day they were baptized or the moment they began living as Christians. Others come close to God through suffering so deep that they have no one left to cling to but Him. And then there are people like Julius Fine who come close to God through an upright life, through honesty, goodness, and reverence for God according to the light of conscience they were given. The letter does not say, good people are automatically saved without the Church. It simply reminds us of this: God can read what lies deep within a human heart, even when, outwardly, that person stands outside the visible boundaries of the Church. In Julius's case, what Padre Pio perceived was this: he was not abandoned, but was on a path of purification, being led toward the fullness of God's light. And here, Julius's personal story touches a greater truth, one that many people misunderstand. We do not reach heaven by slipping through a legal loophole. If we are saved, it is because a love has been quietly seeking us for our entire life. After receiving the letter, Florence began to pray for her father in a completely different way. Before, every prayer had been shadowed by one great fear, the fear that her father's soul might already be lost before God. Now she prayed with a simple trust that her father was in God's hands and that her prayers truly helped him. Each evening she spoke his name in prayer. Lord, I thank you that my father has been saved. Please lead him deeper into your light. For the Catholic Church, this is the meaning of praying for the souls in purgatory, not to change God's mind, but to cooperate with his mercy so a soul may be fully purified. The story of Florence and Julius reminds us of something important. When someone we love dies, our love for them does not end. It only changes its form. From hugs, care, and spoken words, that love becomes prayer, the Holy Mass, and small sacrifices offered for them. And in the eyes of faith, none of this disappears into nothing. It walks with the soul we love, quietly, steadily, like unseen footsteps leading them home. If you have ever lost a loved one who was not Catholic or who never received the sacraments, you may carry the same quiet worry that Florence did. You might not say it out loud, but from time to time, the question returns: where are they now before God? The story of Julius Fine does not give us permission to judge every situation. The Church does not teach that good people automatically go to heaven. But this story does give us the right to hope, and more importantly, the right to pray. It shows that God can reach a person in very hidden ways, in the deep moments of conscience, where no one else can see. And if God was able to hold a Jewish father like Julius, then He can do the same for the loved ones you are remembering. You do not need to deny your worry, but you do not have to live in despair. In God's hands, your love and your prayers still matter. If this story brings to mind someone you have lost, especially someone who was not Catholic or never had the chance to receive the sacraments, you may quietly entrust them to God right now. If you wish, you can also write their name in the comments. Not to share sorrow, but so we can pray for them together, just as Florence prayed for her father.